Hey there, YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Lion Collectibles. It is Friday here, and I am getting ready for the UFC fight card happening tomorrow in Las Vegas. It is UFC Fight Night 212, Grasso versus Araujo in the UFC Apex. I kind of alluded to in earlier videos that I am a huge MMA fan, UFC fan. Anybody who knows me knows that this is the case. I try to watch every fight that I can. Any fight, UFC has been really great about putting on cards almost every single weekend. So it's a big plus for me as a fan. I've been watching since I was 16 years old. I grew up wrestling, which is a huge part of martial arts and mixed martial arts. My friends and people that I've met in that kind of sport all really gravitate to this sport because wrestling is a huge part of the sport. I've been watching since I was 16. I watched UFC. I used to stay up super late to try to watch Pride FC in Japan. I've just been watching for a very long time. I know a lot of the fighters. I know a lot of fights, history, that kind of stuff. It's just it's a passion of mine and something that I love. There is not much better to do than a Saturday when you don't have much going on. Have the boys over, barbecue, have the fights on, drink some big boy sodas, and just have a good time talking about the fights, watching the fights. So big UFC fan. And kind of thinking about what I want, to kind of put out on this channel and how to stay consistent, I came up with the idea that the UFC is almost every weekend. This is where I can be consistent, right? So I love the fights already. I'm actually a pretty big gambler. I enjoy gambling. I gamble on a lot of UFC fights. Why not kind of change that gambling into sports cards? Sports cards is investing. It's similar to gambling, like any investment. Use some of that money that I would normally gamble with and invest that in sports cards, UFC cards, in the fighters that I think are going to win, and share that with you on the channel. So this is what I want to be the mainstay of this channel. Every Friday when there's a fight, I want to put out a video, talk about the main card fights, show you guys cards that I have either in my inventory or I recently purchased, and then give you guys my picks, talk a little bit about the gambling aspect, kind of some of the odds and bets. I'm a little bit scared to put out some bets because I don't, want to deal with the embarrassment of losing. But it's something that I do all the time. I love talking about it, so I figure we can have some fun with it. So let's go ahead and jump into the fights this week. Again, UFC Fight Night 212, Grasso versus Araujo. It's in the UFC Apex. It's their smaller arena. Really kind of love fights in the Apex, in my opinion. It's something that the UFC started doing during COVID. To kind of keep the sport going and keep fights going, and then they've kind of kept it now. It's their own little arena. It's more intimate. I believe it's a smaller cage. Definitely not something that you want to have huge fights in, but for these fight night shows that kind of have lower name, not as big of names, and people kind of trying to make a name for themselves, I think it's super great. Fight nights, kind of something a little bit about the UFC, right? The UFC have numbered events, so UFC 280 is what's coming up next week. Huge fight card in Abu Dhabi, stacked top to bottom, pay-per-view, all that stuff. UFC fight nights are really kind of typically like a growth card, right? It's a card where you'll get one or two big names, maybe one or two kind of ranked fights where it's super important for rankings in a division. But the rest of the fights are really up-and-comers. There are people that are fighters, guys and gals, trying to make names for themselves. So I enjoy these just as much sometimes as big fight cards, maybe not just as much, but I enjoy them because you really see these fighters giving it their all. Like, it may not be a huge fight to the division at that time, but to this fighter, to their career, it is everything. And so you really just see spectacular performances from people, fighters going and giving it their all. Like, it's a good time, they're good fights, and sometimes they end up being just like smash mouth great fights of the fight cards of the year. This fight card, in regards to the cards, kind of came up with this over just the last couple days. Haven't really had a lot of time to buy or invest in any kind of bigger cards. I do have some stuff that I'll kind of show just for kind of the purposes of the card and hobby channel. But for this fight card, not going to have a lot of cards to talk through, more so just kind of want to get this kind of episode going. So let's dive into the fight card. and we'll talk about some of the fights. So first fight on the card is going to be Alonzo Menefield versus Misha Cirkunov. Alonzo Menefield is a minus 205 favorite. Cirkunov is a plus 160 underdog. This is at lightweight, so 205 pounds. Cirkunov, he's 15-8 is his record. He's a submission specialist. He's a big hulking guy. I actually thought he had a lot of potential in his early UFC career, but he's kind of faltered as time has gone on. He's a submission specialist, has some power on his feet, and has improving striking always. But what he's really kind of shown is that he can gas pretty heavily. He's a really muscular guy. And if he can't get the fight to the ground and he's fighting somebody who's a better striker than him, he finds himself in trouble relatively often. He's actually 1-3 in his last 4, and he's on a 3-fight losing streak. But yeah, Cirkunov, he's a tough guy, but has some big holes in his game, in my opinion. Menefield, 12-3. The dude is a giant. He's an athletic beast. Former football player. He played in like the CFL and arena leagues. He's got 9 wins by KO out of those 12 wins. I think he has promise. Anybody who's super athletic, athleticism is a huge part of fighting. But he has shown to kind of be humbled a little bit. He came into the UFC undefeated, and then had some troubles in a few fights. But I still think he has some stuff left in the tank. I think his athleticism will carry him. He's a big, strong striker. He looks to kind of close the distance and throw big shots. So in this one, my prediction is that as long as Menefield can keep the fight on the feet and not get over aggressive if he hurts Misha and get taken down or anything by Misha, I think he should win. I think Misha's boxing is not going to be good enough to protect himself when he gets tired. I think Misha will probably go for some takedowns. If he can't get that to the ground, then it's going to be a standing fight. I would look for Menefield to KO him, in my opinion, but it really just kind of depends on how the fight goes. The odds, minus 205 for Menefield, that's a little bit too high for my blood on a fight that could go either way, given where these guys are at in their careers. I'd hate to throw $200 just to win $100 on Menefield and then see him getting taken down. That would just break my heart. So if I was going to put my money on anything, and this is not an official fight pick from myself, but I would go for the odds for KO from Menefield. That's plus 100. I think that's how he likely wins anyway. It'd be a bummer if he won a decision, but at 205, given the size of these guys and their gas tanks, you typically do see a lot of finishes. So I would go Alonzo Menefield. I don't have the card in hand. I'm going to put it right up here on the screen, a picture of what it looks like. But I was on Whatnot, actually the Whatnot app the other night. I was watching The Coffee Breakers. I'll put a link to their Whatnot in the description. He was opening UFC 2022 select cards. I ripped a pack through him. I think Whatnot's a really cool program. And in that, I pulled this card, which was an Alonzo Menefield 2022 Panini Select Prism. And then it's numbered out of 199. I don't really, you can't really see exactly what you get because it's being ripped, but I think it might just be a red, not a red disco. This one, so it's the one that I'm showing you guys right here. Right now, there's not a lot of sales going on for this card, but I've seen listings at $15 to $25 for the out of 99s. So, I think you could see a nice little bump on that card if he goes out there, emphatic KO. Kind of cool to pull that and rip that in a pack. It was a high value pack. So I'm excited about it. Menefield by KO. Give us some more value on your rookie select prism card. Next fight is Victor Henry versus Rafael Asunciao. Victor Henry's 22-5. Rafael Asunciao is a vet. He's 27-9. This is taking place in the bantamweight division, 135 pounds. This is moving up on the fight card. This fight night card did lose a really big fight. Askar Askarov versus Jonathan Martinez in the 135-pound division, number 5 and number 6. Really big bummer to lose that fight. I believe Askarov had problems making weight today. So that fight's off. They moved this fight to the main card, and it should be exciting for the most part. Henry, I don't know much about him, to be completely honest with you. He's only 1-0 in the UFC. He's actually got a pretty big record. He's been around for quite some time. But he came to the UFC. They gave him a fight against Ronnie Barcelos, who at the time was kind of surging, still is like a top contender. Guy came in off the street and beat him. So super impressive, kind of shocking. He's getting another step up here. Not really a step up in competition, but he's getting a vet, which tells me that the UFC is kind of pushing him a little bit. So this should be cool to see him and how he does. Rafael Sunciao, long-time UFC and WEC vet. Anybody who's been watching the UFC or MMA for a while knows that Sunciao's been around for a long time. He has fought the who's who in this division. He holds he's fought in Uriah Faber, TJ Dillashaw, Pedro Munoz, Aljamain Sterling, the current champ, Marlon Moraes. Like, he's just been around for a long time, and he's got in general a good winning record, 27-9. But anytime, what's really been the story of his career, anytime he steps up in competition or kind of gets those higher profile fights after winning a few 2, 3, 4 fights in a row, he does tend to fall short. He's got some good striking. He's better on the ground, really, but he's kind of fallen in love with kind of trying to become a striker. And so it's been a rough career for the guy, frankly. He's been fighting for a long time, and he is on a 4-fight losing streak. A couple years ago, he had a huge big knockout loss to Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt ducked down and knocked him out with one big punch. And then he lost by TKO to Ricky Simone, another surging, younger fighter. So he's having some tough times. This could be one of those fights where it's like, put up or shut up. Am I still going to keep fighting, and am I still going to keep putting myself through this? I don't really see this fight going for Sunciao. He's 40 years old. He's on a losing streak. He really hasn't evolved at all over the last couple of years. I think this Victor Henry, again, don't know a ton about him, but being Ronnie Barcelos is a big deal. Should not have a problem with a Sunciao. I would take Victor Henry in this fight. Problem is, he's minus 400. He's minus 405. Rafael Sunciao's plus 290. I would not be putting any money on this fight. Direct, straight bets. Maybe throw him in a parlay. Just too much juice on him. Fight number 3, we got Jordan Wright versus Dusko Todorovic. Wright is 12-3. Dvorovich is 11-3. So very similar records. This is taking place in middleweight at 185 pounds. Jordan Wright plus 170. Underdog Dusko is minus 220. Favorite for the fight. Both of these guys have had some success in their UFC runs. They're both kind of younger guys. But overall, they just have not looked like complete fighters. They both have fallen short when they've fought anybody really good. Actually, Wright is on a 1-fight losing streak, and Todorovic is on a 2-fight losing streak, or might be vice versa. But both these guys like to bang, like to strike, just don't really have like the full complete composure to like put fights where they need the fight to go, and it's just they're not complete fighters. Not guys that are going to be world beaters and be in contention anytime soon or ever, in my opinion. But they are bangers, and they do like to go out and fight. So, grab your big boy soda, enjoy yourself. It should be fireworks, in my opinion. If I have to pick a winner, I would probably go with Jordan Wright. So both of these guys are strikers, but in my opinion, Dusko takes time to get warmed up. Like the fights that I've seen him win, he kind of takes some damage as time goes on, and he kind of builds up and then wins. Jordan Wright's a little bit, I think, has some power and should be able to push the fight early. If he can hurt Dusko, maybe he gets a finish early. That's kind of where I would lean. But again, this to me is too much of a toss-up. Would not put any money on this fight. Fight number 4, second to last fight, Cub Swanson versus Jonathan Martinez. Cub Swanson is another vet of the sport. He's 28-12. Jonathan Martinez has been in the UFC for a little while, 16-4. This one's at bantamweight at 135 pounds. Swanson is an underdog, 165. Martinez is a minus 215 at the time favorite. Cub Swanson, long-time fighter, a guy that I've always enjoyed watching fight. He's a great boxer, super quick, really cool movement. And can really hold his own with a lot of people in the division on the feet, especially in boxing range. He holds wins over Charles Oliveira, the current lightweight champ, and Dustin Poirier. Of course, those were a while back. But a guy that's been around for a long time, knows what he's doing, and I think has a great chance in this fight. But Martinez, young and up-and-coming fighter. He's been in the UFC since 2008. He's got a 7-3 record during that time, so he's been super active. His last loss was back in March of 2021. He's currently on a 3-fight winning streak. So, in my opinion, he really has kind of the more crisp. He's more of a sniper type. He's not a big volume puncher. He has really, really good leg kicks. And he does have some of a ground game. It's hard for me to see this fight going Cub Swanson's way. I just think he's going to have some trouble with a younger fighter. Cub Swanson can gas at times. He at times hits people with some good shots, kind of tries to put him away. I've seen him gas plenty of times. Martinez, you just haven't seen a lot of that with a younger fighter. So I think it's a tough fight for Cub. Don't know how many fights he's got left in him, but I don't think he gets away with this one. I think he's probably going to lose this fight. I do have a card of Cub. This is his 2022 Panini Prism. Pretty cool picture of him. It's a base card. It's a 50-cent card, nothing special, but I wanted to have some cards on it. So here's Cub. Unfortunately, I'm not putting my money on Cub. I would go with Martinez by TKO or submission late in the second or the third round. Decisions in the card as well. I'm pretty confident on this one. I would probably be willing to take the juice at minus 215. I didn't really look up any of the props, but it's a risk. I just think Swanson's been around for a long time. He's got some tread on the tires. I just don't know how much he's got left in him. Last fight on the card is the main event. It's Alexa Grasso, 14-3 versus Viviane Araujo, 11-13. This one's at flyweight and 125 pounds. Grasso's the favorite, minus 235, and Viviane is the plus 180 favorite. Alexa Grasso from Mexico, so I got a little bit of that Mexican pride for myself. Araujo from Brazil. Araujo is coming off a rebound win over the cowgirl Angela Lee. It was a really, really good fight, back and forth, and she ended up kind of edging her out in a decision. She has looked really, really good in her time in the UFC. She's a little bit of a banger, does have some good ground game. Overall, she's 5-2 in the UFC, so she's establishing herself as a name. Grasso, though, I've been super impressed with her during her UFC tenure. She's a great boxer and striker, leg kicks, works behind a jab really, really well. She's quick, she's precise. She just picked up a rear naked choke submission over Joanne Calderwood, which is a big win for her. And she's really confident right now. She feels that like a win for her maybe puts her in title contention to fight Valentina, the champ. I'm not quite sure about that. But she just fought like a lot of really good fighters. Her only losses in the UFC have been to the current champ of the 125-pound division, Carla Esparza, and then she also lost to Tatiana Suarez, who is another girl who's undefeated, great wrestler, and looking to make her comeback sometime soon. So great strength of schedule for Grasso. She's fought some of the top fighters there. She's come out on top way more times than she's lost. And so for me, I'm going to ride with her. I think she's surging. She's got all the momentum. Viviane just got that big win against Angela Lee, but it was a back and forth fight. It could have been a split decision. Like, a lot of people might have thought she lost that. She's a little bit older, 35. Grasso's 28. Just a little bit of a difference there in kind of their athletic abilities. I think Araujo's probably the stronger fighter, but I just think like if Grasso can keep it on the feet, keep it into a striking battle, she should be quicker to the punch, quicker to land, work behind the jab, work behind the kicks. She might even frustrate Araujo late because Araujo can kind of brawl a little bit. Frustrate her over a couple different rounds, put her into the third or fourth, and then maybe catch her, overexerting herself trying to look for a finish, being frustrated on Grasso. I think Grasso can finish her. So, I'll take Grasso by late finish, possibly by decision. I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen here. I was this close to buying this Grasso signature card out of the 2022 Panini Select. Auto card. It was listed for $50. I did find a comp that sold for $130. It was earlier in the year though. Recent comps, you'll see like out of 25 of that rookie card. selling for 50, 60, 70 bucks. So the ask it now price on this red one that I was going to buy was 60 bucks with $5 shipping. Would have made the guy an offer probably in the lower, $15 to $20 range if I could have, but wasn't able to pick that up. I'll probably be sorry if she goes out there and KOs or gets a finish, but little too much for my blood for what that guy wanted. Thanks for joining me for this episode. I hope these episodes are fun and cool. I have a lot of cards that I purchased the other night for UFC 280 next week in Abu Dhabi. Really excited for what I'll be able to show you guys on that card. But we have a really cool fight card this weekend. Tomorrow, UFC 212, fight night, Grasso versus Araujo. Let me know if you have any picks on this fight. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys at the next episode when we hopefully get a few wins for Menefield, because that's the big card that I'm looking for. Thanks for joining me, guys. See you next time.